Hey everybody, Ryan here. Today I'm going to talk about, this is day 18 in the JavaScript 30 course, but I'm not really going to talk too much about how I solved the problem. I'm going to talk about, because later, once I solved the problem, I wrote some tests for my function. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about testing, but I'm just going to use this little problem as a starting off point. So basically, the idea is that you want to take all of these LIs with the times, and we're going to add them all up, and then we're going to get a total time. So it has to do with like basically splitting up the string and then tallying up all these numbers, converting those strings to numbers, and then outputting the result. So I can get rid of all that's from some console log. I'll get rid of that. But you see here, it's outputting the string of the console, 4 hours, 58 minutes, and 58 seconds. And if you add up all of those, that's what you get. So the way I solved it is I just I select all the elements with an attribute of data-time, make an array from that, and then we use this accumulate time function to reduce it down into an object that has the total minutes and total seconds, and then we create a string from that object, and then we just console log it. So let's look into the functions a little bit more. This accumulate time is just taking in the time, it's checking the length, and then it's pulling those out, it's splitting it on the colon like I was saying, it's just parsing the int, parsing those strings into ints and adding them to the accumulator, and then we're just returning the accumulator. I'm going to get rid of that. That's what was printing out all those objects before. So now we just have the 4 hours. Okay, so pretty simple. So we're taking in a list item, and we're reading the data attribute, and then we're adding that to our accumulator in that function. So we're accumulating the time, and then we are creating our time string. So this is a little more complicated, but not really. We're just doing some type checking up here. That's what I use in my tests. So I'm just making sure that the minutes and seconds aren't negative numbers, because you can't really, there's no such thing as really like negative time necessarily, I guess, at least in this context. And then I have minutes and hours. I just set these little labels on the numbers because I don't like having magical numbers in my math. So we're creating our total numbers or total hours. We're using the math.trunc to take, if we end up with like 1.5, and if you pass 1.5 into math.trunc, it'll just give you back 1. So it takes off that decimal. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're taking off the decimals. So I'm saying minutes plus seconds to minutes. I'm converting the seconds to minutes. That's in this function. Again, this is just some type checking, and then we're just truncating seconds divided by 60. It's a kind of a complicated way of just dividing by 60, but everything has labels and it's very readable and I think much more maintainable and much more less intimidating when you just look at it and there's a bunch of crazy numbers and you don't know where they're all coming from. Nothing has labels. So everything's got a label here. And then we just do some more math here, and then we just return that string we were looking at. Okay, so let's look at the testing part of this. So I'm using a module.exports to export these 3 functions right here, here, and here. And notice 2 of these are pure functions. So they take in a value and then they return a predictable value. So depending on, like, they're going to return the same value. Given a certain input, they're going to return the same value each time. And that makes them much more easy to test. Same thing with create time string. The only thing that doesn't do that is this accumulate, or actually no, the accumulate time does too, actually. But we need to mock the DOM in our tests. So let's take a look at our tests real quick. So I have all these in our describe blocks. I'll just show you, we have a package.json. So this is kind of new. I haven't covered this in any of these other videos. So if you want to install Jest, you have to first install Node and npm, and then once you have, if you don't have that, you can go npm-v, I think it is, yeah. And so it'll tell you what version of npm you're running. And then if you want to npm init in a directory, or initialize an npm directory, essentially, you can go npm init-y, or you can just do init and then hit enter, and it'll, actually here, I'll make dir, cd foo. So we have an empty directory. If I go npm init y, it's going to just create a package.json there, and then we can use npm to install stuff. So we do npm i-save dev jest, and it'll pull it off. If you want to learn more about jest, there's this documentation here. That's where I got that from. They kind of walk you through some basic stuff, and you can check all the documentation there. I'll link that in the description. So we have jest installed as a dev dependency here. I'm gonna cd remove rf foo. There we go. Okay, get rid of that. So now if we look, we'll get rid of this too. If we go to our tests, we can see I'm pulling them all in from our script, which is where I was exporting them before. This is so we can mock the DOM. I'll cover that in the accumulate time one. That's where we're using this this one. Yeah, see, we have to mock the DOM here because we're actually pulling, because this function is what actually pulls the data from the data, like element data set. It pulls that from there. So we have to have fake elements to pretend like they exist for this test function. But the other ones are pretty simple because they're just doing math operations. So seconds to minutes int is 60, so we expect that to be 1. We're just dividing by 60 these, so 50 divided by 60 is 0 point whatever, and since we're using math.trunc, it's giving us 0, which is perfect. 600 minutes is going to be, or 600 seconds is going to be 10 minutes, and so we're checking that. So that runs, that's perfectly fine. Same thing for here. I do some fail assertions. You can check to see if it's going to throw an error, and that's what I'm doing in the seconds to minutes. I'm checking the types. So if the seconds isn't type number, I'm throwing an error with this message, and if seconds is negative, I'm throwing an error with this message, and that's what we're testing for here. And you can test to make sure the error message exactly matches it, or you can just say to throw and not have anything there, but I like having the actual message because then it's very specific. I like having specific tests. And one last thing is when you're checking for errors, you have to wrap it in a function. Otherwise, the error is actually going to throw an error in real life and it's going to stop the test. So your test is going to fail, even though technically because we're checking for an error, this should pass because it's supposed to fail under these conditions. So just remember to wrap it in a function and then pass it into the expect. Okay, there's that. Same thing for these. I'm mocking these objects here, and then I'm calling it, and then I'm expecting it to be a particular thing. So if I only have 60 minutes, I'm expecting the string that I get once I pass in this object to be 1 hour, 0 minutes, 0 seconds, and it is. Okay, yeah, and then real quick, just to show you, I created this test here in our package.json. The reason I can run, if you want to run tests, you can go npm run test, and it's going to run all my tests. The reason that works is because in my scripts, I have a test script, and then I put jest test -- watch. And so we want to have, this is the path to my folder. Actually, I probably should, I don't know if I need this actually. Let's find out. Yeah, that worked too. Okay, cool. So I can just call jest, and I guess it's smart enough to look for these script.test.js files. And I have the watch flag on here just so it stays active. So if I change something, let's say we want to expect this to be 0, we'll make a test fail on purpose. See, it auto-loaded, and now I'm failing one test. I can go back up. I can see it'll tell me this is where we expected a 0, but we received a 1 because I changed this. I'll change it back to 1. Save. It'll rerun the tests. Everything passes. So that's why I have that watch flag there. Last thing we'll get into is the mocking the DOM here. So I have, yeah, here we go. Okay, so I'm creating an array, and I'm creating an array of nodes. I'm just doing a map, and then you can actually access, because this is running in node, this isn't running in the DOM, so you don't have access to the window object or the document for that matter, but mainly the window object because that's where document lives. You don't have access to that, so we have to basically make our own, and Jest comes with a nice package called JS-DOM, so we have to require that in, and then we actually have to pull out this is called a constructor function from the package, and then we create a new instance of JS-DOM from the constructor function. So we say use the new keyword, and then you just pass in whatever HTML you want. This one I just did a basic HTML because that way it'll just create a window object. They have more in the docs here. believe it was. Oh, here we go. JS DOM. I'll link this in the description too, but this is the GitHub for JS DOM. And they have a little thing here. So all you really need is that, and then you have access to the window object, and you can use that to programmatically create HTML elements. So I have that, it's attached there. So that's why when it exists, when I call dom.window.document.createElement li here, that works because I am bringing in JS DOM and I'm creating an instance of it and I'm just calling it DOM. Okay, and that's it for this video, I think. Yeah, we just have our nodes and then we have our accumulator, and then I pass in, one of the mistakes I made when I was doing this is first I had the expect, I had this array.nodes reduce inside of the expect, and it was having an unintended consequence of actually running it twice. So it was failing because I was reducing and I was changing this accumulator object, and then I was running it again and changing the same accumulator object. So I was actually getting more than I needed to. I was getting 2 minutes and 60 seconds instead of 2 minutes and 30 seconds because I was adding, I was running the reduce twice on this array. So that's just something to keep in mind. Inside of here is like kind of its own enclosed container. So if you run an operation and change objects, you only want to run it once. Otherwise your tests are going to, if you have multiple expect clauses inside of your test. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.